Hey, what's going on, guys? I am Mark Sparks, and here at the men's room, and I know you see who's to my right. I was like a man who needs no introduction. My man, Cajun.
How's it going, man?
Life is good, brother.
Whoa!
Right? Like, and Jackson.
Jackson's here. Come here, bud. Oh, look at that. Hey, buddy.
See, he knows who the man is in here right now.
A lot of trust going on right now.
A lot of trust going on.
Yeah.
Dude, it's been probably 2010, 2011.
Yeah, well, it's been a while since the last one. Yeah, 2010, and then the first one was like 2007 or 8 or something.
Yeah,
so.
we've some time has passed.
Got a bit older. Got a few grades, and yeah.
So like, what's? I mean, everybody wants to know what's happening.
Yeah, man, not much. Just living the dream, I guess, and I'm still doing a little bit of the teaching and stuff like that.
Right.
But I'm an old man now, so I do a lot of old man stuff. I sit around and drink scotch and work on cars.
Right.
And,
do you mow the lawn?
Mow the lawn.
Nice.
Do the yard work and stuff like that. So yeah, just that sort of shit.
Dope, man.
Yeah.
It's been a journey. You talk about 2008, and where we're at now. You started this thing, and you're at where you're at right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think when we get to, we call it old man status in the game or whatever, but you get to reminisce.
Yeah.
You get to look back a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any spots that you look back and you're like,
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because I do, like I said, I still do consultations and stuff, and one of the things that I find has influenced my teaching is sort of whenever I have a new guy come to me and say like, how do I talk to girls? Like, what do I do in this situation? And they ask me advice. I always end up talking about stuff that's kind of like, these are the things that I wish I knew when I first started. And even though, like, looking back on that video when we first did this, 6-7 years ago, I think, man, I wish I could go back and tell him some things that I've learned since then. And it's funny because a lot of these things are so obvious, and they're almost things that you kind of think are true, like maybe your mom tells you when you were a kid, but you misinterpret it, or you have examples of what happened to you, you're like, no, that was wrong. And then you get older and you see this stuff happen over and over again, you're like, oh wait, it is that simple. It is as simple as this.
Right.
So I think that as you get older with this sort of stuff and the way that I teach, obviously, I've simplified a lot of stuff, and I think it works better. I know that a lot of the guys that work with me now are saying that they get better a lot quicker. There used to be, when we first started doing this for the first couple of years, there was this thing I can't remember what we referred to it as, but essentially what happened was guys would start off at a certain level, and they'd come to us, and actually for the first few days they'd get worse.
Right.
And then they would get better, and they would get a lot better than they were before.
Right.
And now I find the way that I teach now, they get better right away. And
so no dip right at the beginning.
Yeah, and the reason why I think is because the way that I teach, I don't try to like break them all down and say like, do this. There's like no rules anymore in terms of like, never do this, always say this,
Right.
It's a lot more organic, the whole teaching process, at least for me personally.
For sure.
Yeah, so yeah, I find it's, maybe we can get into a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely want to do that.
Yeah, but that's the biggest difference I find. Things have gotten simpler, yet a bit more...
Right, like more sturdy, I guess, more hardy.
More hardy.
Yeah, that's the kind of, because it's funny, you talk about organic, and I think from watching what you were doing with the love system stuff, and just even your own vibe, reading about and following you and being able to talk to, you've always been sort of an organic guy. Yeah,
I don't know. I've always been really, I don't know.
And that's not saying no rules or no system or no logic, but it was more.
Fuck it. Like, just have fun.
Right. Yeah, essentially.
I don't like rules. I mean, even when I first got into this and I started teaching, and there's obviously a curriculum that we had.
Right.
I'd always try to stay away a bit from the stuff that was really like hard and fast rules. I always preferred to make it a little bit more open to interpretation.
Right.
Having a little bit more improvisation going on and stuff like that.
Right.
And then I find it's now as it's gotten as I've progressed, it's a lot more of that. It's a lot more organic, and it's funny because that's what attraction is, right? Like when you're seducing a woman. This is a really good segue into one of the first things I always teach guys. Men, we tend to favor this logical approach to everything, really.
Right.
And I think I could talk for hours about how it goes back to the to the tribe existence that humans have lived in for pretty much forever.
Right.
The men are always, our tools are what give us more meat.
Right.
We like to have, the sharpest spear. And we go running. We don't talk a lot with the other dudes. We just go out and get the job done, bring the meat back.
Right.
So for us, our existence is really logical. It's all about the tools and stuff like that. And that's how we survive for pretty much ever. With women, it's more emotional, right? It's about talking and creating sort of connections with the other women, let's say in a tribe, but even nowadays, and it's just with their friends, having their safety nets, all that sort of stuff, which is still important in some ways for men, but not nearly as much as it is for women. So what I kind of like to teach guys is, okay, so with men, we favor logic.
Right.
Women tend to favor emotion. It's not to say they don't have logic or
emotion,
but we tend to favor it. And the way that we react to things is inspired by those things. So what I mean by that is, okay, I'll give an example. With men, logic equals emotion. Okay?
Right.
What I mean by that is, if something happens, that determines how we feel about something. Now, I'm talking strictly in a social sense. So let's talk about, or let's use an example of you spill a drink on a girl. Okay?
Right.
So you're talking to a girl and you spill a drink on her. To a man, we think, oh, we spilled a drink on her. That's terrible. Now I feel like an asshole.
Right.
And fair enough. You maybe are. Right? And because of that, that is the reality of the situation. So logic equals emotion.
Right.
Now, for women, it's different. It's emotion equals logic. So for a woman, it might be something like, oh, he just spilled a drink on me. Does he feel, is he acting as if this is a bad thing? Okay, it is. Now it is.
Right.
Kind of thing, right?
Right.
And
frame it
different. Yeah, it may not be the best example, but
no, that's perfect. I do totally.
Yeah.
It's just waiting for an emotional response,
right.
And then you give it, so you create the frame of what's going to happen next.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So they're always going to search for the emotional cues to determine what the logic of the situation is.
Right, that makes sense, for sure.
Yeah, so, and that's something I wish I could go back in time and tell myself, because it would solve, you're talking about not just in a bar, but in relationships. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, one of the big problems between men and women is that we don't understand, a lot of time where they're coming from, they don't understand where we're coming from.
Right.
We see it completely different.
Right.
So I think part of getting good at this stuff is understanding those emotional cues. Mm-hmm. And when you understand those, it makes you a lot better because you can pick up on stuff almost instantaneously. And I've said this before, any guy that does this, I always used to tell guys, if you want to get good with girls, go and talk to them. Like, that's it. Just talk to them. You don't need rules. You don't need a list of do's and don'ts. Just go and talk to them. And what you'll learn is after a while, you start picking up on these cues and having almost like a social sixth sense of what the vibe in a situation is. Mm-hmm. You can tell when they're attracted to you just by their picking up on their emotions.
Sure. So I'm going to pause for a second there because I think that's an amazing, first and foremost, we're always telling you can't just read about it. You got to go and practice it. And so, whatever it is, if I want
that's logic versus emotion right there, right?
Right.
You can't read about it, you got to do it.
Right, and that's exactly, and I think a lot of guys get caught up in learning all the rules. Okay, I always go back to sport, and for basketball, tuck your elbow, follow through, tuck your elbow, follow. But if you don't go and shoot a bunch of balls, it doesn't matter.
Oh man, you know what? That's a really good point, and because I've heard athletes say this, I've heard artists say it, I've heard musicians
are huge,
and they all say the same thing. They say when they're operating at their 100% top level game, they're not even conscious, it's almost like it's channeling through them.
Right.
And I've heard Michael Jordan say, like, I know if the ball's going in before it leaves my fingers.
Right. But as soon as he starts thinking about it, and artists, musicians, and athletes, as soon as I start thinking about, hey, I haven't missed a shot today, or hey, I've hit every note, all of a sudden,
yeah, exactly.
Right.
They overcomplicate it.
Right.
There's a good book, The Inner Game of Tennis, that goes into that quite a bit. Talking about being in your head versus sort of being out in reality, I guess.
Right.
And it's true. And I don't know what it is. I'm sure everyone's experienced it. Everyone's played the game of pool or basketball where you're just sinking every shot in a row and you're on fire.
Right.
And then you start thinking, okay, I really don't want to miss this next one. You become self-aware of it and it gets fucked up.
Yeah.
And there is something magical there. And you hear artists talk about it and athletes and stuff. That when you actually get good at recognizing that and being able to channel it and almost trusting it, you can do some crazy shit. I've had situations where we call it being in state, by the way. Right. And I've had situations where I've just been in a really good state, and women have, like, let's say, said something to me, and I'm a pretty witty guy. Like, especially when I talk to girls, I like joking around and being sarcastic.
100.
And say a girl will say this really nasty barb to me. and I'll come back instantaneously with something, not even thinking. My mouth just moves and the words come out. And if I had thought for 2 months, like studying of what the best response would have been, never would have been as good as what I had said in that moment.
Right.
Yeah. It's insane. So there is, you know, and you start doing this stuff and you start noticing it and you're like, what is that?
Right.
How do I channel that? Where does that come from?
Right.
And there is this thing, I think, in this human sort of element to it that anyone can do. It's very interesting when you're able to channel it, because there's this feeling there where it's almost like, and this is what I said earlier, it's more simple. Like, you don't have to think about it.
Right.
You just kind of trust it. I guess it's faith in a way. But it's, just trusting it, and it just comes out. Not every time, obviously, but when you're in state, definitely.
Well, I think one of the things, you know, talking to guys, you always say, be conscious of self, but never self-conscious. And there's this thing about self-awareness. And as an athlete, you watch yourself to get better.
Yeah.
So I watch this game. Why? Well, I want to see what I did when I was doing really well.
Right.
I want to see what I was doing when I wasn't doing so well.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's a little bit harder when you're talking to women, because it's hard to film yourself talking to women. But you can always go and sit down and think about, okay, well, let me think about what happened, and not in a critical way, but in an awareness way.
Yeah.
You say, get rid of the rules, trust. And I think faith only comes from repetitive action. But in order to start an action, I got to have some sort of, and I'm talking about the beginner guy, I got to have something. I don't know what to say. I have nothing.
Yeah.
So you're telling me to go on faith, but my faith is don't even go over there. Like, I don't have faith.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me to get rid of the rules, but at the same time you're telling me to trust myself, but I don't trust myself. So how do you get me from this to being able to trust myself? Is there a rule? Is there a strategy? Is there an idea you're using with these guys?
This is the great question, right? And there's sort of like it's almost like a paradox, because, a lot of the stuff that I teach now is sort of saying exactly what you just said. Like, yes, that's great, but how? Like, what the fuck I don't know what to do.
Right.
And it's funny, because the solution to that is to just stop thinking about how you don't know have anything to say, right? I'll give you a few examples of things you can actually do, though.
Word.
So one thing, the biggest thing actually is just, and most people don't like this answer, is just exposure therapy, right?
It is exposure therapy.
Yeah, you're scared of the situation. Like, the guy that's in the situation is scared of it, right?
Right.
So in order to get over it, first thing he has to do is to not be scared of it.
Right.
The thing that fear comes from the unknown, right?
100.
So, and that really is what it comes down to. There are things that are logical fears, but even if you ask like a UFC fighter, are you scared to get punched in the face? What do you think he'd say? It's his job, right?
That's just what I do, right?
But when you think about it logically, you think, well, wait a sec. Getting punched in the face is really dangerous. I mean, you can break shit, you can die.
Right.
If anyone knows how dangerous it is, it should be a UFC fighter, right?
Right.
Because he sees it happening all the time.
These guys go down.
He sees guys go down maybe permanently, right? In his career.
Right.
So if anyone knows how dangerous it is, it's him. And not only that, he's in a situation where he's going to get punched repeatedly, probably.
Right.
And might be in the same situation. So if anyone should be scared of getting punched in the face, it's him.
This guy, right?
But he's not. And the reason he's not is not because it's not something that's scary on paper. It's because he's done it and had it happen a million times.
100%.
Right? So it's because he's familiar with it is why he's not scared.
Right.
So the idea here is that in order to get over this, the first thing you got to do is to not be scared of it anymore. And to not be scared of it, you got to fucking do it. And there's this feeling that you get when you overcome your fear and do the thing that you're most scared of. That's what being a man is.
Yes.
Right? And they teach this since, every culture that outside of the Western culture makes, it's called a rite of passage, right? When you become a man, and they do the same thing in all cultures, not the same thing specifically, but it's all based around overcoming fear.
Right. Go out and don't,
And that's what a man is.
Right.
A man is someone who can overcome his fear,
right.
and you become a man. In all these cultures, you'll see these guys grow up after having a rite of passage. They do start acting like men after that.
Totally different.
But now in our culture, you get guys that are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old that are still like man children.
Yeah.
They never have that moment where they have to have the differentiate between a boy and a man.
Right. Where they make the right. You're right.
Yeah. So this is a big thing. So I think in a lot of ways when I teach guys this stuff, it is a rite of passage. And there's a reason they talk about brothers in arms and shit. People that go to war together have the strongest bond.
Yes.
And you see this a lot of the time when you have these guys that come to my class and of course with me as well. There is a strong bond that gets created there because you're going to war.
Right.
You're dealing with one of the most scariest things in the world, and you're overcoming it with your comrades.
Sure.
And it creates a strong connection. So it is something I think that's primal. It is something that I think that it's tough to do alone. which for a lot of guys is how they have to deal with it. They're out alone, or maybe with their equally scared buddies, and they say, I don't want to do it, they don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
So there is strength in numbers in that regard. But for the most part, you kind of have to just man up, for lack of a better term, and do it. And you are going to fail a lot. And you are going to get, blown out, as we say. You are going to get insulted, probably, and it's all good for you. So it's not going to kill you.
More often than not.
More often than not.
You're going to live. You're going to live.
You're gonna live.
There might be like one or two documented cases.
Yeah.
So
that's the first thing.
Right.
The second thing is
exposure therapy.
Yeah. The second thing is get out of your head. Now, a lot of the time we tend to sort of go internally when faced with a problem.
Yes.
That part of our brain that we sort of resort to when we're faced with a problem sucks at social interaction. It's terrible. It'll never have a plan for you that is going to work.
Right.
Right? So that's why guys come to us. They say, oh, and this is the great fallacy, is that people are coming to us to learn a logical solution for an emotional problem.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. It works to a certain degree, having some logic, but really what it is us giving them something that'll make them less scared so that they get the exposure therapy.
Right.
That is part of like the big reason why this works. It's not that the lines we give are magical, or that even the advice that we give is going to make girls throw their panties at you.
Right.
It happens, but that has more to do with the guy sort of being able to put himself in a situation where he's not scared, as opposed to him saying a line that he read on the internet.
And that's kind of, and just to bring it back to even what we were talking about at the beginning with the logic to emotion versus emotion to logic, you teach him how to create that state of, what should I feel right now? You should feel good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I feel good.
Yeah. And
you teach him how to do that.
Yeah.
But, so you're almost saying, teach him is probably, you unlock in him the ability to do what he can do already.
Well, I hope so.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what we like to say. And I think that, and it's funny too, because you get guys that sort of experience this. And, I always say, if you're going to get a taste, this weekend, if let's say I'm doing a seminar,
yes,
I'll say you're going to get a taste this weekend of what it feels like, to be the man version of you, for the most part. So they get a taste of it and they think, oh, this is how easy it is.
Right.
This is all I have to do. I just sort of have to lose the fear, open up, and not give a shit what they think.
Right.
Stop being insecure.
Which is different than being an asshole.
Right. Very different.
Right. And I just want to, because I think sometimes guys miss that. And they think like, a fuck it attitude, or it is what it is attitude means being an asshole.
Right. Assholes are actually, and it's a pretty vague term, I think, because there is obviously a scale here.
A wide range.
A wide range of assholes. But the assholes that are actually assholes, that a girl would be like, that guy's like actually a fucking asshole, usually are the most insecure people you'd ever meet.
Right. They're bullies.
They're bullies, yeah. And that's easily, you can easily tell when you talk to them. Right. And then there's assholes that are I just don't give a shit and don't care. I'm not mean to him.
Playful, for sure, for 100, yes.
Like that he won't be my committed boyfriend asshole, as opposed to the he steals my shit asshole.
Right.
So for the most part though, those assholes, the good ones,
the lovable
assholes, are the dudes that just don't care about what other people think of them. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the biggest thing, I suppose.
That's a powerful tool, right? Being confident enough to not care, because that takes let's be real. I don't know how long it took you to get there. Well, how long did it take you to get there? They ask you.
Yeah, well, my personality hasn't changed that much since I was, I guess, a teenager. I've always been, I don't want to say always been confident, but I've always been the class clown. Mm-hmm. I've always been used to getting a lot of attention for being, for standing out and stuff. And I was in student council and theater and stuff in high school. So for me, it's always been sort of part of me to have no problem having a lot of people look at me and judge me. And
it is what it is for you.
Yeah, for me, it's always been like that. And I come from a huge family. And so I was always used to having a lot of people and sort of being the center of attention.
Right.
So that was never a problem for me. I think for some people, let's say, that are a bit more insecure, it might come down to them just never having those experiences, right?
100%.
Like as soon as they have people, they can tell people are looking at them, they get really self-conscious.
For sure.
And I think part of that is just from inexperience. I think if you put yourself out there, because I used to be like that too. And I still am in a lot of ways. I'm totally introverted. Mm-hmm. Like, if you ask me what do I do on a night off, I'm probably going to sit at home by myself and, read a book or watch a movie or, not go out.
Right.
Yeah, I don't like It's not that I don't like it. It's just that I prefer to be alone when I have the free time, right? So if anyone complains like, "Oh, I'm introverted. This shit can't work for me," shut the fuck up.
Right?
Because,
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah,
100.
because it's not about those are guys that just or women I suppose too that are too scared to stand up to their own fears.
Right, and it's easier to logic it away as it's not for me.
Oh, I have a condition that's
they can't change it.
Yeah,
right.
And it's like you're basically just pushing away responsibility to deal with it by just saying it's something that you can't help. Anyway,
I love that you say that. Just I would say I'm an extroverted introvert, and I'm out. But it's the same. If I have a choice, give me a book, and I'm chilling in my house in my rocking chair. You know what I mean? I'm chilling, legit. So
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things that for most guys you just got to get out there and do it. I mean, I always tell guys the story of how I got good. It was just going out a lot of times by myself, just going out and talking, and I was sort of trying to figure it out. And in the beginning, I was seeing it as a very logical process, but then after a couple of weeks, I was like, all right, fuck this. I'm just gonna have fun with it. And then, 6-7 months later, I was kind of decent.
Right.
And it's just from sort of getting. I mean, our brains are wired to avoid pain. That's
100%.
The brain's number one rule is avoid pain, right? And that's what it uses as sort of as a way to learn stuff. So even if you're not conscious of what you're doing when you're going out, and social pain is a very real pain. You know what I mean? Like embarrassment, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. So if you just put yourself in situations where you constantly get rejected and put in these situations, your brain, whether you're aware of it or not, is going to learn how to deal with those things.
Right.
And you'll get better. So that's the big thing. It seems like a cop-out of an answer, but that really is the best way to get good at this stuff without being the weird, logical, social robot kind of guy.
Right.